Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with a video on my best move. What is this about? Well, you are looking now at the front cover of the Chess Life magazine, a US publication, and you see here the proud US champions of 2018, Sam Shankland and Nazi Paikidze. But over 25 years ago, it was somebody else who was on the front of Chess Life magazine, and it was a long-term supporter of the Chess to Impress channel, a viewer, Dan OHanlon. And 25 years later, Dan OHanlon was once again telling the story in the My Best Move feature of the magazine. Dan OHanlon, as you can see here, is a retired circuit court judge. If you want to see the whole article, I'll be happy to email it to you. Send me an email at classroomchess@gmail.com and I will forward you the article that Dan kindly sent to me. I won't read out the whole article in this video, but here are the main points from it. As Dan OHanlon says, in 1993 I was contacted by some outstanding chess players from New York City. They were putting together a team for the East Division of the US Amateur Team Competition. And the team must have an average rating under 2200. And as Dan's rating was 1770, he was contacted by the other stronger players because they needed somebody with exactly that rating in the team to just be below 2200 and make the team as strong as possible. As Dan says in the article, we won it all and got our picture on the cover of the April 1993 Chess Life magazine. And going into our third match in the East Regional, I was facing a man named Scott J. Stout, who was rated 2097. And that's where Dan OHanlon, our viewer, made his best move. Let's have a look at Dan's game. It was played, as said, in 1993. Dan was black, so we're going to look at this game from the black side. And his opponent, Scott J. Stout, opened with e4, g6 from Dan, d4, bishop g7, knight c3, c6, bishop e3 and d5. It now looks like some strange Caro-Kann, but I checked the database and this position always comes from an e4 g6 opening and not from a regular Caro-Kann. Here white played e5, queen d2 is another main move, but e5 was played as said, and here h5 is one of the main moves, but also the move that Dan played, knight h6, is very common. Developing that knight, bringing it into the game. Here the main line is queen d2, attacking the knight now with two pieces. It's only defended once, so then knight f5 is the move. You want to preserve the bishop with white, so bishop f4, then h5, just to give a variation from the database. Another move after knight h6 is f4, but white played bishop e2, just bringing that bishop into the game. Dan played f6, also a common move. It's immediately attacking white center, putting pressure on the e5 pawn. And here white plays a strange move. He plays h3, and this move does not really belong in this setup. And that gives black comfortable play. Dan took on e5, d takes, and here Dan castled. He also could have played knight f5, which is the strongest move according to the engine, with a threat of d5, d4, forking two pieces. Then white can play bishop f4 to avoid the fork. d4 comes anyway. Knight e4, and the engine wants to play queen d5 and says black has a fine game, is maybe already slightly better here. But as mentioned, Dan decided to castle on the 8th move. Knight f3, bringing that knight into the game, and here knight f5 is a playable move, but Dan dropped the knight back to f7, which is also fine. Both moves are the first two choices of the engine. Bishop f4 from white, and now queen c7. And the engine likes this move, and it is quite a brave move, as it is somewhat counterintuitive to put a queen in the line of the bishop on f4. even though that bishop is currently unprotected on f4. Brave move. Another thing it does, it is now putting a lot of pressure on the e5 pawn. It is attacked by 3 of black's pieces and only defended by the bishop and the knight. Here white castled, and that's okay. Can we now not take that pawn on e5? Well, let's have a look. Dan did not take on e5, but if he had done that, then knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and then white has the very nice move knight takes d5 to win that pawn back, to make sure he's not a pawn down. Can you not just take that piece? No, you can't, because if you take on d5, then the queen takes on d5 and it's check. A double attack, check, and attacking that knight with 2 pieces. It's only defended by the queen. And after e6, queen takes, bishop takes. White has a very good position. An extra pawn, the bishop pair, and better development. So let's go back. We had castled with white and we said, can black not take on e5? We had played bishop takes e5, knight takes, knight takes, knight takes d5, and now taking that piece is a blunder, as we just showed. But after queen d6, white is slightly better. So after castling, taking on e5 with the bishop is not great. Taking with the knight gives similar variations. I will not show you. It's quite similar to what we just looked at. So taking on e5 is a bit premature. And Dan saw that and played e6 instead. Here white played queen d2. And now we have to look at that capture on e5 again, because now the d5 pawn is protected once more, because black's last move was e7, e6, and now taken on e5 does work. And then calculated and saw it. Again, it's quite brave to take that pawn with this bishop shining through the knight, attacking the queen, and now this bishop is protected on f4. But it works, it tactically works out, and it was a very good move from Dan. The best way to play here for white is to take on e5, bishop takes, queen takes, and then f4. And white has some compensation for the pawn. The black queen side is still undeveloped, and the e6 pawn is a backward pawn. So compensation for white, but black is slightly better. White will have to prove that he has enough compensation for the pawn. But back to the game. After knight takes e5, Scott J. Stout did not take on e5. He played king h1, and that was a big blunder. White must have been thinking about how to make use of the knight on e5 being a pinned piece. And as black can always bail out with knight takes f3, with the king on g1, that would have been a check. So it's a bailout option for black. White decided to take away that opportunity for black, and that's why he played king h1. Here Dan OHanlon in the article in Chess Live writes, I looked and looked again. I could hardly believe what my chess mind was telling me. It looked to me like I was winning a whole piece. I took the plunge and played my best move ever. And the best move ever here is just taking on f3, taking that knight, even though it's not a check, and it leaves the queen hanging on c7. My opponent studied it for a few minutes, then held out his hand and resigned. We stood up after just 15 minutes of play and started putting the pieces away. All my teammates assumed I had lost. I'll never forget their looks of jubilation when I said, no, I actually won. And that put enormous pressure on the other 3 boards across the table from us, and we won the match and the East Regional Tournament by 6-0. Well, let's have a look at his final position. Why did white resign? He's losing a piece indeed. Yes, he can take that queen on c7, but with black's last move he is counter-attacking white's queen, and that is crucial. After knight takes d2, black is just a piece and a pawn up. If after knight takes f3 you take the knight, then there's another point that we see. Now this bishop is attacked twice and only defended once. So black can just take on f4 with queen or rook, and again is a piece and a pawn up. There really is nothing else. Black is just winning here. and White did not have the strength to continue a piece down, which Magnus Carlsen, our world champion, did against Gawain Jones in the Tata Steel Tournament 2018. He blundered a piece, was a piece down, but still won. But we are not all Magnus Carlsen. Great game, great story, and thank you very much, Dan, for sending me the article and for allowing me to make a video on this for the Chess to Impress community. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, I will read them all and I will reply. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel, the link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.